because he's had so much experience across so many different companies. So he knows what works, what doesn't work. Yeah.
No pressure. No pressure.
Take it away. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, so as Shireen said, is that I've spent the last 7 years coaching media advertising, communications, and tech businesses predominantly. And I'm quite happy to be sharing some of the knowledge that I've seen out of those conversations with my clients. For today's conversation, I'm absolutely not giving you silver bullets to change, where you are and where you're going. I think it's more sort of high-level observations and some real good, hopefully, sort of thought starters for you guys to take away. And I think that in terms of just me rolling this out today, you guys can interrupt me at any point with any questions you have, or if you want to keep until the end, I'm happy either way. Just prompt me if you want to chat along the way. If something I've said doesn't make sense. Are we happy to go?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Okay. So I think the first thing I wanted to start with now, just in terms of the current sort of COVID situation, is something I saw at a talk about 4 weeks ago, and I've kind of butchered it a bit, but I love the thinking. It was the metaphor was that the entire population has jumped into an Uber, or we got into our car and we've set a destination into Google Maps, and we're quite happily en route. We know where we've left from, we know where we're going, we understand the destination, but ahead of us somewhere there is a roadblock. We can see some kind of roadblock, and let's call that roadblock COVID-19. What we tend to do is we veer off the road, we go left, and that lovely lady on Google is going, make a U-turn. Make a U-turn. In 200 meters, make a U-turn. And at some point, you realize that you cannot make a U-turn because you have to find a new route to get to your destination. And at some point, Google realizes you're not going to make a U-turn, and you are having to go a different way to get to the same end point. Now, for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, they're stuck in that make a U-turn phase where they're trying to go back to what was. Talk about like the normal that was. And I believe that, SA, if you've heard this over and over, that normal is gone. We now have to go to a new future, a new destination, potentially all the same destination, a different way. But the big thing is you've got to get your head around the fact that you cannot make a U-turn. There is no going back. There is only going forward in a new direction. So without being too much of an exaggeration, obviously the space that you're in, I talk about you are dead. There's a lot of that going around within different industries. And obviously the media and communication space, a lot of it's being really, really hard hit. So I believe that we are obviously facing a very large scale population behavioral change. A lot of the ways in which we work has burnt us out. Our value sets have been changed and challenged. The way in which we consume content has been changing dramatically over the past few years, but in the last month or two has been dramatically outdated and in some circumstances made completely obsolete. So some of the trusted rules of communication we've relied on have been turned upside down, and a more decentralized model of commerce and independent professionals and freelancers and technologies have become more prolific in the way which communication is produced and media is distributed. So you're not dead, but the world was changing and COVID has brought that forward. Now, obviously we've all seen some of the local victims. So Associated Media closing completely, Caxton closing a whole bunch of their publications. Ads 24, which is part of the Media 24, it's their media house, have retrenched massively, cut all their freelancers from their database, and are halving, apparently, I haven't seen this yet, but halving almost half of their 100 publications within South Africa. So massive knock-on effect. And the important thing here is that COVID never killed the industry. The industry was dead already. COVID is just the proverbial nail in the coffin. It's an accelerant. It's brought the future forward. What was going to happen just happened sooner. So we can break the conversation into sort of traditional and new media. But I think that what's been interesting to me in the last year or so is that guys like DSTV are trying to stop Netflix across the African continent by getting involved with the regulators versus trying to fight the actual change that's actually happening beneath them, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to change policy to protect their business model when the business model is dead. The advertising which supports free TV, that model is dead and has been for quite some time. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I mean, DSTV since the first quarter of last year loses about 20,000 subscribers a quarter. 20,000 people stop paying their subscription every 3 months. And that's been the trend since almost the end of 2018. So there's a similar story when it comes to music. Spotify, Google Music, Apple Music, killing the local radio stations. You'll find that during COVID, a lot of the regional radio stations have closed. So there's been a lot of pain in terms of that kind of media, just purely because there's no advertising. So the landscape has been changing dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm repeating myself, but it's been brought forward by COVID. One of the big trends that I want to unpack here to understand why this is changing is the tech companies growing dramatically right through this entire COVID pandemic, right? The big four, the Apple, Amazon, the Googles, and the Facebooks, plus all the peripherals, have grown considerably from a stock value price through COVID, when the balance of the NASDAQs and the Wall Streets have actually taken a serious hiding. And this can be said with the same with all the online retailers like the Lululemons and the other non-traditional retail stores, not the non-brick and mortar stores. The reason this is important is that these tech companies own what is known as the rails, right? The rails is the distribution model. It's the way we get the content or the product to the consumer. So things like Amazon being the biggest online Google, it's the biggest search engine outside of Google and YouTube globally. In the period from 1st of March till the end of May, from the 1st of January to end of May, was up 33% in their stock price. And a big portion of that is that because they have become such a big player in the media space and are taking all the advertising money that was spent on all the other channels, trying to promote the stuff that we buy on a day-to-day basis. Now, within South Africa, our online purchase history has been very poor compared to sort of the Europeans and Americans. We've been very slow at adopting online purchases. And I think COVID's been a mass propellant in terms of people spending money online. But I think Amazon landing in SA is going to be the big turnaround. And I'll explain to you why this is important to this conversation. So Jeff Bezos, the Amazon CEO, their strategy has been very simple in the last 21 years. 2019 was the first year in 20 years that Amazon showed a profit. And not because they weren't profitable, it's because Jeff Bezos instructed his team, if you make a profit, if you show profit and you're giving dividends back to shareholders, I'm going to fire you. I want more distribution, more fulfillment centers. I want growth. So they've been running on a zero profit business model, which no one else can compete with when they've got shareholders, when shareholders are expecting value back in terms of dividends and cash flow. So you cannot fight a business that doesn't want to make a profit. And what's happened traditionally amongst the other BRIC countries is when Amazon have landed in the countries, and I believe that this is what they're going to do in this country, they do one of two or three pieces, which I'll explain to you briefly, which is going to dramatically upset the media space. So the first thing they do is Amazon go after the general populace. They don't go after you and me who are buying toys on Amazon. They're going after the people in the outskirts, in the townships that are buying your sunlights and your whitewashing powders and your dog foods and your toilet papers. They want the mass volume. What they've done in the past from case studies, when they land in Brazil, they go to the Unilevers and the Nestle's and the Procters and Gamble's and the big producers of the stock standard ShopRite, Pick and Pay, Spar kind of stuff. And they say to them, we want a better price than you can buy it out of a Pick and Pay. And generally, what happens is the guys say, no, we've got to look after the retailers. The Pick and Pays are important to us. So what tends to happen then is that they go, cool, we're going to put your sunlight on our platform at, let's call it 20 Rand a bottle. What we're going to do is we're going to bring out a house brand at 15 Rand. We're going to call it Amazon Green Soap for 15 bucks, which is 5 Rand or whatever it is cheaper than the sunlight, which is the brand we've all become to learn and love. And what they then do is they then make sure that when we're actually purchasing online, that they always try to put the house brand in front of the branded product we've been buying for years and years. What they will do here is that when they hit the townships and they're going to spend a huge amount of money driving traffic to buying online, is that when I think of like the person in the township that would never have bought online, when they suddenly see they can buy a cheaper product than the ShopRite, and they can try buy it online through any kind of electronic mechanism, through credit cards or some kind of other e-wallet, and they buy it online and they get it delivered to their house at the same or cheaper price and they have a good experience, they're never returning back to the retail and they're never going to buy the brand they've been buying. Now, the reason I'm saying this is important is that when this happens, and it is happening on a global level, is that when Amazon starts deteriorating the value in sunlight from Unilever and the dog food and the toilet paper and the brands we've learned to love, those brands are the single biggest spenders of advertising globally across all the channels. So traditional media, print, across everywhere. And he actually erodes the value of those brands systematically, and they slowly stop spending the money. And that has a massive effect on all the media channels in terms of the media, the guys that own the media space, and their business is deteriorating a lot. So it also means for you that once I get a really good online experience, I'm not going to stand in a queue in again, which means that there's no impulse buying of your Glossy magazine. I'm not standing in a queue. I'm not going to buy your magazine. I'm not going to have that impulse. It also means that people selling all kinds of widgets land up advertising on Amazon platforms and not in the traditional spaces like potentially like your magazine. Part of this further insight is that Amazon have learned that in the States that people are now buying more and more using voice. So they use the Alexa or Google Home for argument's sake. And because firstly, because we're incredibly lazy. Secondly, it separates the less clicks, making it much easier for us. And what it's now doing is that when you go, dear Alexa, please send me Sunlight Liquid, Alexa's going, we've got Sunlight Liquid at $20. We've also got Amazon House Brand at 15. What do you want? Now, if I say I want Amazon at 15, I'm never seeing Sunlight again because it's realizing and the algorithm's tracking that I'm not buying the brand. If I say, no, I would like Sunlight, please, what Amazon are also doing is they're sending a second box to my house with the delivery that I'm paying for, which includes the Amazon House Brand. Now, again, we are incredibly lazy. What they're saying to you is that if you don't want the house brand, put it in the box, contact us, we'll pick it up from you for free. It doesn't cost you anything. Now, the reality is that you and I are lazy and we're not going to send it back. We're going to land up using the Sunlight first, then the house brand, and realize that the house brand is actually a decent product. And the next time we go, dear Alexa, please send me Sunlight, they're going to go, we see you kept the house brand. Would you rather have that at a R5 saving? And guess what? I'm going to go, yes. And systematically, they're going to erode the P&Gs, the Nestle's, the Crafts, the Unilever brands, and those toilet papers, dog foods, green soaps, whitewashing powders that we think we're loyal to, we actually aren't that loyal to. We're loyal to the category, not the brand. We're going to stop spending money, and those companies are going to stop spending money on advertising eventually. This is happening globally. So that's one example of why money is leaving traditional media channels and moving to Amazon. Another really good example, and this is a true reflection, a true story, is that SAP, which is an ERP system which runs the likes of your ShopRite Checkers, your Woolies, your Macro, your Game, your Pick and Pay. They know everything about that business. They know the point of sale material, the distribution, their warehousing stock. They know who the clients are. The SAPs, the Ciscos, the IBMs know more about the clients than the retailers do. So this is a true example of a case that happened in Macro in Springfield, which is just outside of Durban. SAP are the system that run the entire backbone of Macro. And traditionally what would happen is that when long life milk starts reaching expiry, Macro would phone the likes of Clover and go, please come collect your stock and you can destroy it at a huge cost to Clover, huge cost. What they've now done is they realize that when Trader Joe, the average person, buys Clover long life in more than one or two, but is buying a pallet or a trolley load, because you have a Macro card or a Woolies card or any of those cards, they know who is buying those products. What they're now able to do is to target you directly with an SMS, an email, or a WhatsApp of some kind of direct digital play to say, dear Trader Joe, we see you buy Clover milk at X amount a carton. We can discount it by 20%. The discount is paid for by Clover. So Macro make the same amount of money they usually do. And the Trader Joe comes in and buys that stock before expiry because he's getting a good deal. Now, what's important about this is that there is no creative, there is no agency, there is no red tape. This is an automated process that attracts the right client to buy the right product at the right time. And they're closing the loop. They know that if they've SMS'd Trader Joe and Trader Joe comes in and buys product, they can see he's bought the product and they know the results of the campaign. Now, if you think about traditional broadsheets, which is your products and price, the amount of time and effort it takes to put that together, get it into print, get it in someone's hands, and hopefully Trader Joe sees it and then comes and buys. I mean, it just cuts that entire process out and eliminates agencies and the media buyers completely. And the ERPs, the SAPs, Ciscos, and IBMs are buying digital agencies globally to fulfill this kind of thinking. Again, I'm telling you this because what it's doing is that it's eradicating the requirement for traditional creative agencies and long format print like the newspaper broadsheet. destroying print completely. Another great example is this, and I'll laugh, maybe Shireen will laugh as well, but my mother is now buying from Checkers on the Checkers 6060 app. Now, traditionally, my mother would never have thought about using any kind of e-commerce platform to do this, but e-COVID, she tried it, it worked. She may or may not ever go back to the store. And the other thing which is important here is that her experiencing new products is not by her watching magazines or reading magazines or watching TV or hearing radio. It's being pushed to her through the actual application. And at the same price within a 2-hour delivery, currently they're meant to be under 60 minutes, but under 2 hours, is a very good experience in this country. And people that have never ever thought about it or considered using e-commerce are now buying stuff and being influenced by the application, not by traditional media. She's not going to go back to consuming or being influenced by other media in a rush. I hope you're all there. Okay. The next story I want to just unpack briefly is to understand the layers of the impact. You may have heard people talking about first, second, and third order of the ripple effect. For me, the better way to explain this is that think about peeling back the layers of an onion. So we've all are clearly understanding the impact that the airlines have had through COVID in terms of the fact that SA is under massive pressure. There are airlines closing all over the world because they just cannot sustain the overhead without the customers. But what is important here is the knock-on effect of the airline industry, and I'm using this as an example, which will explain to you further regarding to your own business, is that it's not about the airlines. It's about the fact that now Hertz, I don't know if you saw a week and a half ago, Hertz globally have shut down their own Dollar and Thrifty, about 40 to 50,000 employees retrenched, Chapter 11, they're insolvent. So Hertz closed. The knock-on effect of that is that somebody, potentially Hertz or not Hertz, owns all these parking lots around the airport. Someone has these massive plots of land that are now no longer required. There's probably 10,000, Toyota Corollas sitting in their Hertz fleet that no one's going to use going forward. Where do those vehicles go? Think about Bidvest Food Services. They supply all the airlines with food. What happens to that business? Think about obviously the general tourism impact on that. Think about Netstar and all the tracking on those vehicles. So if you peel back the onion, the layers, there are so many further ripples that happen from every single disaster. But what's important about it is that if you can think about what the next 2-3 steps are away, which haven't been impacted yet, there's the opportunities. The opportunities to go, well, could I get involved and start buying cars and selling cars secondhand? If restaurants are going to close because tourism is bad, what's happening to all their furniture? Can I ship it to Africa for argument's sake? So there's opportunity everywhere that may not be directly within your line of sight or within your actual business, but spending the time to understand what the knock-on effect is where the opportunity is. The other two massive ones that are coming down the pipeline is insurance. Insurance is going to have a massive change. And those of you that got kids understand the education problem in this country, but globally education and that value exchange is going to be dramatically challenged. People are not going to spend millions of rands on a Harvard degree when the kids are only getting Zoom calls as opposed to the living experience of, sleeping around and drinking and getting drunk and having all the fun stuff that goes with living in Harvard. All that value has been extracted. They cannot expect to charge the same price for Zoom calls a couple of hours a day. So I think that there's going to be a lot of a knock-on effect into those two factors, sectors, insurance and education. And again, the result is that they're not going to have budgets to spend money on traditional advertising, which is expensive. They're going to move their budget into the online space where they can find and recruit clients. You may have heard the saying that if content is king, then distribution is the kingdom. And distribution is often referred to as the rails. Who owns the rails within the organization, within the network, within the sectors? So an example of a content business is Netflix. But Netflix, same as Spotify, is a content business, actually doesn't own the rails. You cannot consume Netflix unless you are on an Apple device or a Samsung Smart TV or using Apple TV or one of the other channels. Google has the apps, Apple has the apps. They own the rails. They can actually turn on and turn off that content if they so require. So what is important here is that within businesses, to understand what are the distribution channels and what are the rails that you guys sit on, and figure out, well, how do you change or own those rails that you can be the person that decides what the consumer gets and how they get it and when they get it, and own those distribution channels. So you got to remember that, like in the past, Shoprite Checkers owned their retail. They didn't own the last mile. They didn't own the delivery to home. They now do. They now own the rails. So they can actually get right through to the consumer and cut all the other traffic out. They can cut out all your magazine advertising because now they know they can advertise someone who's got the app on their phone. So what are the rails within your business? What do your distribution channels look like that you may need to change dramatically in order to decide how to control your consumer? If we look at the way some of the media houses have changed in the last couple of months or last couple of years, an example for me, which is super obvious, was that Vice, which was a Canadian, I think Montreal-based magazine, physical print magazine, very quickly realized that print was dying a couple of years ago and moved into a far more linear-based YouTube channel. Now has a Vice.com paid-for subscription TV channel. It does still produce a little bit of print, but it's sort of exclusive, based around events kind of thing. So the reason I've talked about CND, R&D is research and development, CND is copy and develop. So what I'm suggesting here is that look at the guys that are actually doing this correctly and to some degree steal their thinking. They've burnt that path. They were the first guys to market. They've made mistakes, learn from their mistakes and go, well, if they've gone from print to TV, could we chase that? Could we do the same sort of thing? A local example is an online platform called Between 10 and 5. They are predominantly around the sort of art sector, everything art and art related or creative related. They were to some degree, they skipped the print, went straight to a online magazine format. And even that's been taken huge strain. So what they've now done is they've moved into some kind of linear TV. They've just launched a whole bunch of series. The one is called Dough, D-O-U-G-H. It's all about money and they interview people around money. They use ladies like Crystal Birch to go out and do shopping online. People can follow that. They've got something called Drive Dive where they find creatives and allow them to share what's on their computer and the work they're currently working on. A whole bunch of stuff around high art and interviewing the right people around in the art space. And they've moved into the event space. Like this is an example of the Supper Club, where they invite very, very exclusive people around to a dinner, 10 to 12 people. And then that's also shot live and the audience can watch this TV show of people talking and having conversation. And it's a little bit scripted, but a little bit organic, but it makes for great viewing. Moved away from traditional sort of print thinking. Internationally, some of you may have heard of Essence Magazine. They've been around for a very long time. What they've done is they've moved sideways about a year or two ago, and they've purchased a massive piece of Afropunk, which is a global live dance event. It's a super niched space. They talk to the LGBTQ, predominantly Black market. They're currently in 6 countries, including South Africa. So they've bought into a business where they realize that they can use this to leverage the Essence brand, but ultimately it's a profitable business on their own. And at the moment, a large portion of their turnover comes out of the event side, with Afropunk producing different kinds of content, a lot of it visual, obviously, to help bolster some of the content within Essence Magazine. So the one is now feeding the other. Essence have now managed through Afropunk to monetize their leadership to buy tickets to something else that they own. I don't think the Essence viewer knows this, but the bottom line is that Essence push it really hard, buy tickets at Afropunk, and obviously that's how they make their money. Another massive learning that's come out of the COVID space is the Trevor Noah, The Daily Show, which is now called The Daily Distancing Show. So what's been incredible about this is that Trevor Noah is now shooting this from the comfort of his own home on a daily basis. He has no makeup, lights, backstage, all the peripheral traditional TV show sort of stuff. He obviously has writers. They're top tailing it and titling the show. But what is crucially important here is that he now has more viewers than he's had historically with a full-on production show. They hit about 6 million followers this last couple of weeks. And what is important about this is that it can measure the amount of people that have actually watched the show, where before it was immeasurable. And the big lesson here is the content, what they talk about is important. The quality of the production is not that important. And I think going forward, the audience has got to a point where they are very comfortable viewing content that is not beautifully produced, but the actual content behind it, what we're talking about, is thoughtful and entertaining to some degree. So the content is more important than the quality of the production. And I think that's something people need to learn and adopt going forward. We've become very tolerant of very shaky cameras. The age of the influencer is coming to a dramatic end. The influencer market was generating huge amounts of money. And we talk about the big four again, but the likes of the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and all these platforms, the TikToks and the Snapchats, have realized that they are losing the revenue which the influencer is getting paid for off the back of their channel. Now, they want to own the rails. So what they're now doing is that they're making sure that the influencer does not have the natural organic reach that they used to. And unless brands are going to spend money promoting those posts, they're not going to get any reach. And why would I spend money paying an influencer a stupid amount of money if I've still got to still boost their posts when I could just boost my own or the micro influence and get the same reach? So I think what's going to happen over time is that the use of influencers within marketing is going to come, not crumbling down, but it's definitely become more and more expensive to use and less influential to be, excuse the phrasing there. So if you're not spending money, you're not going to get the reach. If I look what's happening globally in the likes of a WPP, which are it's the single biggest holding company for advertisers in the world, is that traditional advertising agencies had the bulk of the money. They were the TV commercial guys, they were the print, they were the radio guys. They set the tone, they set the strategy, they were the lead agencies. Over time, digital marketing and those agencies started eating into that budget. And probably about 3-4 years ago, digital marketers started becoming the lead agency. And some of the thinking was digital first and traditional second. What we are now seeing on a global level is, and this is happening within agencies, is they're putting the data and software piece at the heart of the strategy, and the data and software guys are the guys deciding where the budget is going, right? So if we look at examples where locally we had JWT, which is a global brand, has merged with Wunderman. It's now becoming Wunderman Thompson, where Wunderman was the digital agency and JWT were the traditional heavy agency. Wunderman will lead. And now what's happened is that within the Wunderman group, there was a group called AppLogics. These are the software guys, the data analytics guys. They are now the lead agency on all the big brands, the likes of the telecoms, etc. So the tech guys are now leading the way as opposed to the creative guys. So it's all about the code, not about the awards. And what that is doing is that these people who are traditionally engineers, not creatives, don't care about the look and feel or the winning the awards. What they care about is lead generation, conversion, and measurement. And they're seeing that traditional media, like print, like radio, is actually not really measurable. I mean, it's a lot of smoke and mirror. So what they're now doing is they're going, if we cannot get a measurement, and this is coming from brand as well, we're not going to have that strategy. And the money is moving further away from traditional advertising through digital into data, software, and application. And if you look at what's going on within the Wunderman Thompson group, they start the strategy with what is the digital application, what is the website, what is the point of conversion, and then decide what the digital marketing campaign is. And if they're lucky, they may spend some money in traditional advertising, which means that guys like yourselves, the print, are so far away from the thinking today, the money's moving further and further away from you. There's less chance of you even sniffing that cash. If you look at where the money's flowing, it used to be the chief marketing officer always that got the biggest budgets. What you're now finding within larger organizations, that the CTO, the chief tech officer, is actually receiving a much bigger budget than the CMO, and he's influencing and sits in on those marketing meetings, and he's deciding where the money's going to flow. A lot of that is being influenced by the fact that the consultants, the Accentures, the Bains and McKinseys are now influencing marketing where before it was never ever in their scope. They are buying agencies all over the place and hopefully and slowly changing the landscape and the narrative of what marketing is towards a tech conversation and not a marketing pretty picture conversation. The last piece we get here, sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, someone's joining. Give me a second. The last piece, which I think will influence you, is that I don't know whether you guys have had an effect yet in terms of a drop of revenue through COVID. I'm sure it's obviously within your group you felt it, but traditionally guys are booking adverts a couple of months ahead. So if this started in April, May, we're probably looking at June, July, August, September before we really feel the pain. So a lot of businesses have been a little bit bulletproof, which is not a true reflection of what's coming down the pipeline. So I do think that you just need to be aware that the pipeline may start drying up. And even if you're feeling okay today, the last quarter of 2020 may be your worst. So I've unpacked a whole bunch of stuff on you, which is a little bit daunting and possibly a little bit scary, and started with the slide that, you're dead. So, what are your chances to change the way you work? What is your plan? And I think you need to think also in terms of what you can categorize from what you can change, what you can influence, and what you can change your behavior towards. So I'll give you some tips of what I think you should be thinking about and sort of the areas you could be moving into. Again, thought pieces or provoking thoughts, not necessarily solutions or silver bullets. So the first thing is that, one man's pain is another man's pleasure. And there was a great saying that in the times of famine, the grave diggers make money. So let's just swap famine with pandemic, right? In the times of pandemic, the grave diggers make money. So I think that the high level is that you need to become a grave digger or start selling shovels. And it sounds horrific, but it's around the level of aggression that's probably required to get you through this next couple of months. I think that if you're sitting back and waiting for things to happen, I think you're going to feel a lot of pain. So be aggressive and start looking at opportunities in a different way. One of the big pieces I would suggest that you do is stay out of the middle. Now, I talk about this in general strategic practice, is that the examples that I always talk about is Woolies, Pick n Pay, and ShopRite. So we understand that Woolies is the top end. It's the luxury brand when it comes to food. It's all about convenience, all about packaging, and it's expensive, and it's got its market. And they're clear on that. They're very clear on who they are in the market. At the bottom end of the market, we have the ShopRites. They have the most amount of stores in the most obscure places, and they service the market at the bottom end based on price. They are very clear who they are. Now, Pick n Pay are floundering in the middle, and you can see it by their stock price, is that they're not sure if they're trying to be top end or bottom end. They're not sure who their customer is. And when you walk in there, some stores feel top end, some feel a little bit bottom end. They aren't clear on who they are. And because they're not clear, they are floundering. And this is the same with loads and loads of different brands. I'm using the local example just to prove a point. But what's important here is that within every industry, especially through this COVID period, which has made it very transparent, is that the top end luxury brands with all the bells and whistles will thrive, absolutely thrive, right? People with cash will continue to spend and spend more. And you just think about sort of boutique thinking, that there's always space at the top end. There's a layer there which money, they haven't been impacted at all, and they will continue spending money like they have in the past, if not even more. The flip side is that once the government starts unlocking us properly, I think there's going to be a massive bidding war at the bottom, and it's going to result in lots of bargain hunters. So the bottom end of the market is going to get very, very busy, and it's all about volume and price. And I think you can make a lot of money there. The idea for me is that like the youth of today fit at the bottom. They are going to have buying power going forward. But in the middle, like the middle class is where you're going to fail. If you're sticking out, then you aren't actually deciding you're at the top or the bottom. If you're in the middle, you're being pushed from the bottom and from the top, and that's a dangerous place to be. So try wherever possible, be distinctive and stay out the middle. You need to get as close to technologies that are relevant to your business as possible. So that's internal technologies, from the way using Zoom or using all the different chats, or the way using customer relationship management tools, and figuring out what are the technologies that will unlock value in your business. You need to become super familiar with the use of social media and all the paid media channels that are out there, and where possible, build or create your own affiliate marketing platforms. So you'll find that the hippo of insurance, it's not really agnostic. They sell that it's owned by one of the groups, and they sell the group's different services. But the consumer doesn't know that. So that's kind of an affiliate program to some degree. So get very close to technologies. Start thinking horizontally, and horizontally means collaborations and building relationships with people that are within your ecosystem, not necessarily your competition, but more complementary to your business. So if you think about, well, where do people consume your product? Possibly the concierge services at hotels are important. Think about guys waiting at airports, bad example, or the coffee shops, or in my life, the motorbike dealer while your bike's being serviced. You could think about getting involved with pharmaceutical representatives to sell your product into doctors' rooms. Just start thinking differently about the rails and distribution of your product, and partnering with people that can refer your product and sell you, and you can refer them and make money off the back of their product too. So what I found is that the businesses with multiple service or different product offerings across multiple sectors, so they're not just heavily reliant on retail or just the hotels, have been way more resilient to being punished, and have been resilient to the change. Like they've been better off than other businesses that have been very deep with one distribution channel. So again, partner and collaborate with complementary services or businesses to you. Think vertically means owning your supply chain, and owning the media, and owning your owned assets, like your websites, for argument's sake. So, you know, how do people find you? Where do they spend money with you? How do they get hold of your technologies, your product? What technologies are enabling that? And I want you to think about every touch point, from the raw paper that goes into your product to the disposal of your product. That is vertical integration. Which pieces do you own? And the more you can own, and the further up the chain you can own, the more valuable your business will become, and the more bulletproof your business will become. Charles Darwin was the guy that said that that survival is based on your ability to change to your circumstances. Darwinism, survival of the fittest. And the only difference between Darwinism, which was very slow, and COVID has been the sudden change. So it's very much around the fit survived, but it happened very quickly, right? So as I said to you earlier, is that COVID is an accelerant. It's brought the future forward for most industries. Things that would have happened just happened sooner. So IQ is your intelligence quotient. EQ is your emotional quotient. CQ is your change quotient. It is your ability to adapt and change to your environment. And CQ is also thinking of new ways of doing businesses, looking at the new technologies, understanding new competitions, the new roles, the new services and products that you actually have. If you think of other pandemics or other similar massive impactors, things like 9/11, things about like the Zika virus, that Icelandic volcano, those things disrupted massive industries and put businesses out of business that could not adapt. Those businesses had low CQs, right? So the internet was a slow pandemic, as the internet put businesses out of business. So you need to make sure that you are as adaptive as possible, and have an agile structure in terms of a variable overhead. You know, try use freelancers as much as possible in order, you know, as and when, and push them on price. There are fortune of freelancers floating around at the moment looking for work because agencies are closing down. Another way to explain this to you in possibly a different way is that you've been a tadpole swimming in the media pond for millions and millions of years, and it's now time to become a frog in the media pond, right? I'm not asking you to be a faster tadpole or a skinnier tadpole or a prettier tadpole. I'm asking you to transform into a frog, right? Same DNA, same animal, same space, different look and feel. So you have to change fundamentally what you do and how you do and what you look like, and understand that this is not a flip a switch and change. This is a long-term serious commitment to transformation. And you've got to figure out that where do you want to be, not just in the next 2-3 months to survive, but where do you want to be 2, 3, 5, 7 years from today? And what does survival look like to get there? A lot of that problem thinking turns out to be a legacy thinking. So legacy is, what are the problems that you solved a couple of years ago that your product solves, which you're still solving, but the problem has gone away. So you're still trying to act as though there was a problem that's no longer relevant to your client. So it's now more than ever the time you should be asking your clients, you know, what is your value proposition? What is the value you offer them? You know, what do they actually want from you? And stop thinking in the old way. So if you had to start a business today in the space you were with no constraints, how would you change what you do? And a really simple example of this is people talk about disruption, and disruption always comes from outside the industry you're in. No one saw disruption to the media space coming from technology businesses or the likes of Amazon, who were booksellers. So I want you to make sure that you're removing your blinkers and your biases and looking at your business completely new, as though you were starting it from fresh. Don't think, well, it used to work like this, therefore we should bring this forward into the new world of the new product. I think one of the big things that you can focus on is Lekker, and that is to really use hyper localization, for lack of the jargon, but understand like really where you actually operate and how much information you can add to a very local environment. So that includes your look and feel, your marketing narrative, even goes as deep as your values as a business. So you're thinking about like regional news and local reviews, but make it super regional. And remember that what you're trying to do is build a local community and keep it super tight. So as soon as you're spraying and praying over a bigger area, you're less impactful and you're less likely to survive as a business. If you look at what's happened internationally, the likes of Time Out very quickly did a 180-degree and changed the name to Time In. And if you go to their websites and their Instagram, they talk about reading the magazine, subscribing to the newsletters, and then the big things is things to do at home and things to stream today. So their entire content, everything they talk about, nothing talks about going out, nothing. And what they've now done is they've turned on a subscription model that if you want deeper, more informative information, almost on a consulting kind of basis, you can pay for that. So it's not just reading someone's review, it's actually speaking to someone that's done that. So opening up the network to go, well, instead of saying, come to this restaurant or buy from that restaurant, it's speaking to people that actually bought from there and getting real insight versus just the written word. So connecting the two different consumers, the two different pieces in the market together to actually make it a much richer experience. If you look at the Evening Standard newspaper, what they've done is they've now cut out retail completely. They are going straight like the old milk deliveries to your house. So now you can subscribe and like the old days, get your magazine or get your newspaper delivered to your door, and just deliberately trying to cut out the middlemen. So they're owning those rails again. They've decided, well, there are people that want our product, but they're not getting it from the places they used to get it. How do we get it in their hands? We're going to figure out a way to deliver it to all the doors to all our subscribers at a cost. And that seems to be paying off quite well. So the one thing that I was saying earlier is that building a community is one thing, right? But community is not one directional. And your magazine has been one directional. The online is one directional. Your social media may have been a bit more interactive, but I think that there's a massive opportunity to create a community where the community can actually have forums to speak to each other, and you can insert experts, almost consultants, to help think different and then almost compete with your old advertisers directly. So cutting out your supplier who was paying you, your advertiser, and actually becoming that for your audience is one option. And maybe it's something you can, I don't know whether you could fathom the idea of selling access or selling time to your audience.
I was thinking of Instagram stories. We haven't utilized that yet. But even selling the Instagram, like a live, Instagram lives even. Because our Instagram audience is big, so we can access.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll give you an example of one of my opposition where he started a newsletter years ago. He's got about 17,000 men on his daily newsletter. He's now charging a rand a month or 12 rand a year to get access to, he does like a 20-minute live every single day, and he gets thousands of people onto that channel. And he's consulting, and all he's really doing is basically reading his newsletter out to people and then having a conversation. And when he steps out, that ongoing community of people typing to each other and speaking to each other feeds off each other. And there's a massive value add there. So he's dipping his toe into like a conversation starter, and he steps out, but he's allowing his community to pay to have the privilege to speak to each other, if that makes sense. So like that kind of thinking, I think, has got real value. It's an example, but I think that people are looking for more than just the, can I comment on your Facebook page and hope that you're going to reply to me? It's actually a more in-depth, much richer experience. So possibly selling space to your clients where instead of taking out a half-page ad, say to them, guys, we can insert you into a live forum where you can chat to people and you pay us for that access. So it's not just a piece of copy. It's instead of, you know, the Q&A, it's Q&A on speed where people can actually genuinely get consultation from those suppliers versus reading the best practice, if that makes sense. So those are like examples of what people could do. And I think it's a value add, and you could sell that as a piece of content, like a live thing to your clients.
What's up? No, what's up?
The next, one of the last pieces I want to talk about is that I think there's a massive opportunity for magazines with a large audience to move into the education space. As I touched on earlier, is that education is fundamentally broken. I see that within my own network and within my clients, the experience that they're seeing their kids have in terms of the quality of the content is actually quite shocking. They're realizing they can buy or free to cheap tools online or channels that will give them a world-class education at a fraction of the price. Obviously, a homeschooling aside is a different discussion, but it's what are they actually paying for? And then the big move globally from large companies not looking for the accreditation of a global Harvard stamp or a UCT stamp to show that you've got the education, but more around what have you done with your life, what kind of experience, what kind of short courses have you been exposed to. Those are becoming more and more valuable in the interview processes. So I think that anyone that's got a substantial audience, listenership or viewership, there's a massive opportunity to turn your back catalog into some kind of educational content. I'm not a subscriber to your particular, obviously, the home space is not my thing, but my gut says that if you've been going for many, many years, if you were to go back through the back catalog, you could create huge amounts of valuable content, package it differently, and sell it as an educational piece. And I think that you mustn't underestimate that you're not only as good as your last edition, but you're as good as 1,000 editions prior to you. And just packaging it differently and repackaging it differently, whether it's a learning management system that you're populating, or whether it's just a hard copy book, or it's some kind of online education piece, I think would have massive value. That could be partnered. When we talk about thinking horizontally, you could partner with some kind of education institution and offer them some kind of interior design, course, and get the accreditation with a partnership. So that's thinking very, very horizontally. But I do think there's a lot of money in education because it is still completely overpriced for the value that you get. And you could, again, monetize your audience for them to get a greater value exchange in a very different way from just buying a publication from you. So the second last slide quickly is knock, knock, who's there? There's opportunity, right? So I think that money is moving sideways across industries. Don't think just about your current supply chain. Think about partnering with people that you would never have partnered with, like go to a Wits business school and go, we want to put together a course of some sort. So think very differently to the way you've always been thinking. I think that if we look at what's happening globally in terms of the use of the internet, Internet 1.0 was search. It was Google. It was just having a website and being able to find it. 2.0 was social media, was the two-way conversation. I think we're on the cusp of a 3.0, which is the virtual office space, these kind of Zoom interactions, real e-commerce online. I think that's what's happening here. And if you can catch that wave in a smart way, there's still a huge opportunity to make a lot of money. So, moving outside your comfort zones, reimagining your business without yesterday's biases is really, really important. I talk about localization, but also the fact that if you don't want to go that direction, being online, you can unlock dollars and euros potentially if you're smart about it. Make it more evergreen content, not local, sell it internationally, because once you're online, you can be anywhere. So there are much bigger markets internationally. And then the last thing, which is a personal piece, was, I don't know how many of you know what an Etch-a-Sketch is. I mean, maybe I'm showing my age here, but it was a toy that was invented in the 1950s by a French guy. It had two knobs on the left and right that moved a stylus that displaced aluminium powder on the back of the screen, allowing you to draw a solid line and actually draw, black and white pictures, basically. And as a kid, this thing was absolutely magic, right? It was a toy, and all I needed to do was turn upside down and shake it and redistribute the powder, and I could start again. So I think that COVID-19 and the speed that COVID-19 has come through our lives actually presents an opportunity to envision a life where you can turn your Etch-a-Sketch upside down with powder redistributed, and you can maybe even start drawing outside the lines. So the parting words for me is that, like, you'll never regret trying something new. You'll only regret not trying anything new at all. And I think COVID's given an opportunity to start a new life and a new business for lots of businesses that can and should be, reinvented, reincarnated, rebirthed, and rejuvenated. So I think that the parting thing for me is, like, try and embrace the change that's happening at the moment and think differently. And, you cannot do what you were doing in the past going forward, and you need to really, really remove those biases. So that's me. That was 55 minutes, just under an hour. I'm happy to have conversations. I see there were a couple in the chat. Please feel free. Sorry, I know that I speak a lot, and I wanted to compress as much as I could into that hour. So should I read some of these questions? No questions on the group. Anyone got any questions? Nothing.
No. It was really an interesting talk, though. Thank you.
Pleasure. I mean, it's obviously it's very high level to what's going on there. And I think that the big thing is that there are forces so far away and so big affecting your industry that you cannot sit back and just hope it's going to come right.
Yeah, it's rather sobering talk.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture. I think that you know, I spend time with some very large advertising agencies, and we talk about, you know, is the money after COVID-19 going back to, you know, print or radio or outdoor? Like they laugh, like the money's never going to go back there. And they know that they can sell digital because it's measurable way faster. So I don't believe magazines are going to die. I just think that they're going to become very, very sort of niche, top-end luxury product. There is real value in the same as you're reading a book versus reading a Kindle. There is something quite lovely and tangible about it. But then you also got to bear in mind that, like, you know, some of you may have kids. Your kids have grown up maybe reading books, but are spending way more time on iPads and computers. Their tangible book won't be as powerful as it was to someone like myself. So when those guys reach that point of purchase power, they're not going to prefer reading books because they haven't been exposed to books. So it's definitely coming to a grinding halt, and it's going to be a very few niche publications that will remain and probably thrive, where I think the bulk and the mass is going to really struggle.
Yeah. I think in terms of us, Homeowner has got that advantage because of that luxury print magazine. We've already established ourselves as that top end luxe book, and we have we have people in the magazine that are very loyal and have read the magazine for over 30 years. They've got like emotional ties to the magazine, and I see that a lot on social media. I'm getting nagged left, right, and center. When is the June issue going to be on shelf? They cannot wait, because ordinarily it would have been on shelf already last month on the 20th or the 21st of June. Because of COVID, we've had to, in printing issues, we've had to push it out. So they're nagging us. They want to know when the next issue is going to be on shelf, so they're ready to consume.
I mean, if you've got a client that's pulling your product, that's amazing. But you've obviously got to make sure that your business is financially viable, right? So, I mean, whether they love it or not, if there's not enough people buying it, it's not going to work. And obviously, you know, you're part of a larger holding company. If that company starts failing, even though your division is profitable, you may still be at risk. You know, and I'm using a different example here. So, like, your business is that, you know, someone buys it, they take it home, and if they're lucky, 1 or 2 people see that magazine, right? In terms of each one that's bought. Where if you compare it to like the Daily Sun, they reckon between 15 and 20 people read that on a daily basis. It's a very different kind of market. And those guys are slowly but surely, as data prices come down, as internet speeds pick up, are migrating off the print, and they're not sharing it as much. So those publications are becoming less and less relevant slowly. But I think that it's a question of, you know, if you look at like the News 24, they've got 100 different publications. Do they need that many? You know, and that's just one house within a very small country, being South Africa. So, you know, I think that it's around figuring out what works for you in terms of the brands. And I said to you, the luxury brands will survive because guys will pay more for it. You know, there's that perceived value versus actual value. And if you are a luxury brand, guys will pay, you know, they can pay more, therefore make your business more viable.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Ladies, any other questions? Nothing else.
The talkers on this call, Glynis and Lorna.
Okay, so I mean, if you would like to ask me any further questions, you've got my email address. I'm happy to help with at any point in time. And I just hope that you guys can, you know, think differently and hopefully aren't impacted too dramatically by what's going on around you or the greater holding companies. I'm not sure what's happening there, but, you know, as I say, based on what's going on globally, it is obviously quite a concern. I'm sure there is risk to your employment and to the actual brand, but I do think that there's opportunities to think very smartly and move sideways to make money.
So, sorry, could I just ask something?
Yes.
You think that they're going to be, we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg yet financially?
You talking about your business, or you talking about in general? We've lost Iona.
probably speaking more in terms of our business.
So, I mean, my question to you is follows, is that how far in advance do guys buy ads from you? Like, is it like a month or two that they're buying space?
Well, they can sign a contract months ahead of time. They 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Before.
So I mean, I've lost the owner, so I'm not sure what she was saying, but I think that if you look at, I think about like the onion effect, right? Is that when airlines close, Hertz close. Hertz close, it affects their vehicles, and then the tracking, and the tracking is like the net star for argument's sake. So the fact that Hertz only closed.
I froze for a bit.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you there. So owner, were you asking about your business, or are you talking about the general economy?
Well, specifically homeowner.
Yeah.
I've had clients saying they will look, obviously bulk of them open today.
Sure.
But they've still got to have a period of recovery before they can even start thinking about advertising. So a lot of them are hoping to be back by August, our August issue. You know, we book 3 months in advance. So,
sure.
But do you feel that it could be even a longer recovery period?
I think it's going to be a longer recovery period, to be honest. And I think what I was saying while we lost you there is that the ripple effect, which ripples from the large hard hit industries through to the small suppliers, hasn't been felt yet. So the example I'm not sure if you heard, but it was the airlines close, Hertz close, the Toyota dealerships close, the Netstar tracking closes, the tire suppliers close, the Gumtree farmers for the tires close. So it ripples through industries upwards.
Yeah.
And it hasn't gone all the way yet. And then obviously each one of those big industries has lots and lots of smaller supplies to it, the periphery to it. So, I mean, if I look at like the Togo Sun, I'm using another example, it's in my radar. They shut down 32 properties during shutdown, hotels and casinos. Everyone goes, oh, the poor employees. I'm going, think about the infrastructure that supplies that, the small food guys, right up to the farmers, right? The distribution businesses, the insecticide guys that import insecticide for the fruit that supplies the farmers. Like it goes up all the way.
Endless. Endless.
And I think what's happened is that a lot of the guys haven't felt the impact yet because the money, they were still getting paid for March services in May and June. So cash flow wise, some of the guys have still been okay, but they haven't felt the lack of sales yet. So I do think that we're going to feel this till December. Again, specifically different industries will feel it more so than others. Some will rebound quicker. But the thing which always concerns me is that, it's a bad example, but if a Sappy had to close tomorrow, what happens to your magazine? I don't care how many clients want your magazine. If you can't source paper, you haven't got a business. So the knock-on effect of these kind of things are unknown at this point. So, you could have strikes on the farms, which may only result in a lack of delivery of paper in the months to come. And you'll only feel that in 6 months, 12 months from today. Like you never know how long it's going to take. So I think it is important from a risk analysis to think about how far back you can go up the chain and understand what their business will look like and how it's going to impact you potentially. But I would rather you err on over cautious and overly optimistic. So what does worst case look like, and how do we go about that? I mean, if your biggest channels to market are the retailers, the Pick and Pay, the ShopRites and the Spars, which I'm guessing they're probably one of the biggest. What happens if one of those groups collapse, or if an Amazon arrives and buys a Pick and Pay like they bought Whole Foods in America? I mean, when Amazon bought Whole Foods, they paid $14 billion for it.
You need to get hold of Amazon.
Yeah, and the problem is that they suddenly changed the entire distribution and marketing around their business. Yeah. So if they had to buy a Pick and Pay, for argument's sake, you may lose a third of your distribution overnight. Or they're going to say to you, you've got to spend money with us in order to have your product within the business. So like there's lots of things that could happen. But I do think what's important here is figuring out how do you get to your consumer in a different way is probably the single biggest thing I would focus on, and not rely on all these middlemen that you currently probably have in your life. Okay. Any other questions? We good?
Good.
Okay, ladies, thank you very much for your time. I'll send through the email with the link to this if you want to go back and view it, or if anyone's missed, they can watch it. And then if you want to ask me any questions directly, feel free. Any ideas down the line you want to brain fart or bounce off me, with pleasure, I'm happy to give you an opinion on it. I'm certainly not an expert in your industry at all, but I have an idea of the guys that sit around you, those media buyers, of what's going on in their lives. So maybe there's something I can help you with there.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Ren.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.